Now we are going to create some complex background animation, and the technique that I'm going to show you is very easy and yet very powerful. With a little tweak you can completely change the look of your background and you can create a new background with just a few clicks. So let's begin. So first of all I'm going to create a new composition. So again go to composition, new comp, and I'm going to call this base animation 2. For this one we are going to set the width and height to 500 by 500 and all the things will remain same. Let's set the duration to something like 5 seconds and just click on OK. So here we have our square composition. Now I'm going to add a shape layer. So for that I'm going to use the polygon tool once again, because later on you can change the number of points and you can create a new shape without having to animate it. Now just click anywhere in your composition, and if you hold down the Control and Shift key you can see that it will snap it into the center, and just like that you can just align it in the center of this composition. And for this one I'm going to change the number of points to 4 since we want a square, something like this. And if I go to rotation I can just rotate it by 45 degree so that we have a square of this kind. And once again I'm going to center its anchor point. So select the layer, hold down the Control key and double click on this pan anchor tool. Now I'm going to align it into the center of this comp, just like that. So if I select this layer, I don't want the fill inside the layer. So if you select the layer and you can just simply click on this fill, and from here you can set it to none. Just click on OK. Now I want the stroke around this outline, so you can just simply increase this value. Let's go with something like 30. And again just make sure that it is in the center. So you can select it and you can press S on the keyboard to scale it down or scale it up however you want, which we are going to do it later. So first of all I'm going to add some animation to this. So the first animation that I'm going to use is, if I go under the properties and I can add a trim path, and if I lower down the trim path, here you can see we have two options, start and end. So using them I can animate the outline of this square. And let's start from 0 and I will add a keyframe to both these parameters. And now I'm going to move my cursor to something like 3 seconds, just like this, and I'm going to set the end frame to 100. And in the same way I'm going to set the start value also to 100. Now if I play back here you can see that we cannot see our animation because both the keyframes are at the same place, so we need to displace them. So in order to do that we can select the keyframe and just move it to somewhere around 1 second, like this. And for this one, the bottom one, we can just select it and just move it around 2 seconds. So you can see that these keyframes start from 0 and go to 100, and this one starts from 0 from here and it goes to 100. So if I play back here you can see we have this sort of animation, okay, which is looking nice. So now let's add some easing to this line. So in order to do that you can select the keyframes. So just simply drag and select all the keyframes, and now you can press F9 on your keyboard, or you can just simply right click, assistant, easy ease. And if you click over this icon you can go into the graph editor. Now your graph might be looking different, so make sure you click over here and you are in the edit speed graph. Once you are in the edit speed graph, you can select the keyframes and just tweak them so that your graph looks something like this. Now select the other end and just make sure your graph looks something like this. And now if I play back here you can see that we have this sort of animation and we have added some really nice easing to it. So if I go back and I can add some more animation to this. So for example I can add some rotation to this. So let's select this, press R on the keyboard for rotation, and let's add a keyframe. And again we are going to move it to 3 seconds because the other keyframes are also at 3 seconds. So for this one I'm going to set its value to 90. And now if I play back you can see we have this sort of animation, but you might notice that the edges are going outside this area. So we have to scale it down a little bit, something like this. Again, if you want, you can play around with the stroke. You can lower it down or make it thick however you want. For this one, we are going to stick with 30. So we are pretty much done with our animation, and I can just simply again move the end point over here, and I can right click and click on trim comp to work area so that we have this sort of animation. Now I'm going to create another composition. So go to composition, new comp. Let's call this one animation 2. And for this one, we are going to set the width and height to 1920 by 1080, and all the things will remain same. You can just increase the duration. Let's again go to 30 seconds and just click on OK. So once you are inside the animation 2, we can just drag our base animation. So if I play back, here you can see we have this animation. Now we are going to add some effects to it so that it will cover the whole screen. So under the effects panel, just search for CC RepeTile and just drag it onto your base animation. And from here we are going to expand these properties, so you can expand it to the right side. So let's just set its value to 3000, and just set it to 2000. Just make sure that these values are high enough so that the entire screen is covered with your object. Now you might notice that this is quite large, so we can select the layer and press S on the keyboard, and you can just simply scale it down. If you scale it down too much, you might notice that these are like really short, so you will have to extend them like this. But for this one, we're going to just make them something around 38 or maybe 40, just like this. So now if I play back, here you can see we already have some repeating animation, which is really nice. And if you want, you can go with this loop, but now I'm going to show you how you can tweak it more. So once again, before I proceed, I'm going to just animate it infinitely. So I can just select the layer and right click, go to time remapping, enable time remapping. And once again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, or if you're on Mac, you can hold down the Option key and just simply click on this stopwatch. So now you can again type this expression, loop out brackets, and if I click, now I can simply drag this so that I can extend it to the endpoint. Once again, you might notice that for this one we might not be seeing the gap because we already have a blank frame over there. So we are not going to take any chances, just simply drag it over here and just extend it again. So now we have this sort of animation. So now let's tweak and see how we can make it more complex. So over here you can see we have this option called tiling. Now this is a very powerful option and it gives you a bunch of different presets which you can choose from. So if I simply click on this, and now if I play back, here you can see we already have a different looking animation, and all we did was just change this property, and I can simply change it to flip vertical, and again we have different look. So in the same way you can click and you can have different type of animations. So you can see we are getting different looks and different animated backgrounds by simply selecting these properties. So you can choose random if you want something like this. So for this one we are probably going to stick with the unfold, just like this. Now I'm going to show you a couple of examples that you can create using this same technique. So if I go back to our base animation, and here you can see we have our square. So remember we used the polygon tool, so I can simply select the layer and go under the polystar path and change the number of points to, let's say, 3 if I want a triangle. And again I can select this, press R on the keyboard because we need to change the rotation. So let's move this keyframe back, and we are going to again divide it 360 by the number of points we have. So for this one we have 3 points, so I will divide it by 3 and it will give us a value. And now if I play back, here you can see we have the same animation but with a triangle. So if I go back, here you can see we have created different animation by simply changing the number of points. In the same way, you can animate and create any shape. Now let's see another example. So if I hide this layer by pressing this eye icon, let's create a star. So you can go to the shape tool, and from here let's select star tool. Again, just click anywhere you want, and from here just simply hold down the shift and control key and just simply create a star. Now you can go under the polystar properties, and under polystar path, from here we can change the inner and outer radius. So I'm going to increase the inner radius, something like this. Now let's quickly place this in the center of this composition using the align panel. And if you are not able to see this, again go to Windows, and from here just enable it. Now let's select the layer, and we can press A on the keyboard to show the anchor point, and let's set this value to 0 and 0 as well. So now we have the anchor point in the center. Again, I'm going to align it just like this. So for this one, we are going to add some simple animation. So we are going to add a scale animation. So I can press S on the keyboard, and let's add a keyframe and change its scale value to 0. And from here I can go back and let's go to somewhere around 3 seconds, and I can just simply scale it up and make sure that it goes off the screen completely, something like this. Once again, select the keyframe and just move it to the very end, just like this. So if I play back, here we have this sort of animation. So if I select the layer, press R on the keyboard, I can add a keyframe for rotation, and if I move back into the timeline somewhere around here, I can just simply set it to 360, and the number of points over here are 5, just like this, and just simply move it 1 frame ahead. And if you play back, you will notice that the animation is little bit off. So just make sure that its anchor point is in the center. So you can select the layer, hold down the control key, just double click it. Now it's in the center. So again, once again, we can align it just like this. And now if I play back, here you can see we have this perfect animation. So if I go back to the animation 2, and now you can see we have created this sort of animation, and which is completely different from what we have created earlier. So you can see how powerful this method is. Once again, you can select different values and you can get different results, something like this, and it will give you different result for these properties. In the same way, you can create any animation inside the base comp and it will give you a different result. Now I'm going to show you how to create more complex animation. So you might have seen how powerful this method is, and if you are still underestimating this, then let me show you this example. So if I just hide this layer and I can select a pen tool, and you will notice that how easily you can create a complex animation. So I selected a pen tool. Now what I'm going to do is just simply click anywhere. Let me just quickly zoom out, so you can zoom out from here, and just click anywhere and just start creating some random shape just like this. And you can see we have this random shape, and make sure some of the points are outside the edge of the composition, just like this. So if I select this layer, press R on the keyboard, and let's add a keyframe for rotation, and I can again go back to the very end, and for this one we are going to set this to 360 degree, and let me show you why. Once again, I'm going to move this to the very end. So you will notice one thing, that whatever animation we are creating, we are making sure that the base animation has the first frame and the last frame which is same. So if you do that, you can easily create a perfect loop. So again, I can select it and just make sure it's in the center, something like this. And if you want to tweak the points, you can just simply select the pen tool, make sure the layer has selected. You can select whatever point you want, and you can select multiple points by holding down the shift key, and you can just move them by using arrow keys however you want. So we have this sort of animation. So let me just quickly select this edge and just move it a little bit up, something like this, maybe tweak it like this. And now if I go back, so if I play back, here you can see we have this animation, and which is looking like really complex. And if you show this to someone, they might be thinking how you created this, which is looking very complex. But deep down, you know that it is a very simple technique. You just simply added a shape layer, just animated it, and using the power of CC RepeTile, you just replicated it. So again, you can change these values and you can get completely different looks, just like this. And this is completely up to you how you want to use. And for this one, let's go with the unfold. And once again, if you want, you can just simply come here and you can just simply tweak like this. And once again, if I go back, now you can see you have completely different animation. So how powerful this animation technique is, you can just simply judge it from here. So this is how you can create more complex animation.